Okay, cool. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Welcome for joining today's session. Just for those who first time join our meetup, and a quick introduction for CETA, also known as Chinese IT Association of New Zealand. We are registered NGO organization with primary purpose of connecting Chinese IT professionals throughout New Zealand. So I just paste our website link in the chat box so you can look at our website. Our mission is to foster the professional development of Chinese IT professionals, and we aim to prepare them with the skills, knowledge, and professional and social connections they need to achieve their own aspirations. We provide our members with many benefits, including the social activities, monthly meetups, and mentorship, and you can connect to many IT professionals in New Zealand to grow your career. If you would like to learn more about CETA, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn or view our website, ceta.org.nz for more information. Before we kick off today's session, we often have a quick chat for job hunting. So if anyone in this meeting, if you are looking for a new job or your team is looking for new members, you can introduce yourself and talk about what you're looking for. Maybe you can find someone in our audience. Anyone would like to make an introduction? Anyone wants to find a job? Belong is our yeah uh, chair of CETA. You want to talk something? Okay, fine. Cool. Today we are really happy to invite Michelle to share her career experience with us. Michelle works at Microsoft as a software engineer. As she said, she's a blogger, podcaster, and a YouTuber. I wonder how you can work on so many stuff. So I'll hand over to Michelle. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. All right, well, good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you all virtually. So, welcome to my talk on what do you want to be when you grow up. Like, so my name is Michelle, and I'm currently a software engineer at Microsoft. Now, before I say anything further, I'm just going to put this disclaimer in case, to not get myself in trouble. So this presentation, this talk is not affiliated with Microsoft or any Microsoft products or services or partners or anything like that. Everything I'm going to say is, all a reflection of my own words and opinions and experiences. So in other words, please don't sue me. Please don't get me into trouble. So with that, let's get started. Now, this talk is really about careers and career growth and all of that kind of stuff. And so when it comes to careers, and jobs, most people tend to think that, our careers really start maybe on the first day of our first, our dream job or our first job. And that, being successful is all about, climbing that ladder, one step at a time. And I'm kind of here to tell you that it might not always be that case, and I'm that example. So let's get started. Who am I? Why are you here to listen to me? Engineer at Microsoft. That's one of the titles I've had in the past. I was previously an Azure technical trainer at Microsoft, and I'll talk a little bit more about what these different jobs and roles are later on. And before that, I was a technical pre-sales specialist at Microsoft. So I had a few kind of jobs at Microsoft. And outside of Microsoft, I'm also a blogger. So I write blogs on Medium. And if you're not familiar with Medium, it's sort of this platform which allows writers to write articles and contribute YouTube, but for writers. So you post, blogs and written articles instead of videos. Now, I'm also trying to be a YouTuber, so I actually started a YouTube channel this year. So I call myself a content creator on YouTube, and the YouTube stuff that I do is mostly trying to convert some of the blog content I've got into a video format. I'm also, I suppose, known as an ex-runner, so I have actually 1 year convinced myself to run a full marathon, and I did it, but I no longer really run these days anymore, so I consider myself an ex-runner. I'm a world traveler, so I've lived in a lot of different countries and cities, including Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, and China as well. And I presume I'll probably live in other cities and countries, further down the road. I classify myself as Kiwi Chinese. So I'm ethnically Chinese, but I sort of identify myself as a Kiwi because I kind of grew up here and associate myself with New Zealand. Now, the last bullet point there I put as to be decided, or TBD, TBC, is not a mistake. So, even though I talked about all these things I've done and my titles and all of that, I don't feel like that's an accurate representation of who I am, just because I haven't actually, experienced my full life yet. So the next couple of decades in my life will really dictate who I become. And so I put in that last bullet point as who I am is really to be decided in the future. Now, the agenda today is, I've got a few things. I'll be giving a little history lesson about me, just to kind of get everyone to know me a little bit. And then I'll introduce everyone to this curiosity equation that I've come up with. We'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I've learned, and I'll try and turn that into advice if I can. And then hopefully we've got some time at the end for, Q&A or chit chat if you want to. Now, I'm taking a sort of chapter or leaf out of my trainer role in the past. So we love using this tool called Mentimeter. So I want to use Menti again to try and interact with everyone, just because, we're all streaming in from different places. So if you could grab your mobile phone and just, head into your mobile phone browser and type in www.menti.com, and then we can have a little bit of interaction there. So let me just grab the code. Cool. So if you go to menti.com, type in the code 95389225, and just let me know once you're in. I see you're multitasking there, Philo, holding a sleeping baby and streaming in at the same time. Cool. I think someone's in. All right. So hopefully everyone can submit responses. All right. So this question here is really to get everyone to start thinking about their childhood days. So, if you can just take yourself back a couple of years, or maybe a couple of decades, depending on how old you are, and an adult asks you this question, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was the first response you came up with, or what was the last memory of that response you came up with? So we have a couple of teachers and scientists. I can relate to the teacher one. I think I did say I want to be a teacher at one point. Someone want to be a millionaire? Okay. Well, I think with the rate at, with the inflation rate, you might want to convert that into billionaire. Comedian, okay. A vet or a baker. And that's very different. And just someone just wants to be happy. A traveler. Okay. Cool. I think one of the other responses I came up with, and this was one of my initial one, is I wanted to be a spaceman. So I think I meant an astronaut. I wanted to go to space, and just have a party in a spacesuit, probably. Be a child again. Cool. scientist, teacher, then oh, someone had their like life mapped out as a kid. Wow, okay. All right. I don't know how many people have we got. 24. Okay, I'll give it a few more moments. I feel like we have a lot of scientists in the room. That was 1, 2, that's 4 people want to be scientists. Oh, okay. Teacher again. All right. Okay, we're going to vote for teacher. So it seems like lots of teachers and scientists. Oh, someone want to be a doctor without the parents' pressure. Okay, cool. So let's have a look at the second question. So what's your current job title? Mine's a software engineer. We have test manager and ECE teacher. Okay. Web developer, software engineer, .NET engineer, test engineer. Okay, a bunch of engineers. Business analyst, integration engineer, a programmer, general labor, a GIS, just developer. Is that the like map? You deal with like maps and stuff, geography? I don't know, something like that. Any more? We have a data scientist. Oh, we have a father. Okay. Oh, was that you, Philo, holding your sleeping baby? Front end engineer. um, with a student as well. Okay, so the reason why I asked those 2 questions is just give me a little hand raise if you know how to do that in Teams. It's in reactions, you can do a little like hand raise. Give me a little hand raise if you actually ended up becoming what your childhood version of yourself thought you would become. So still someone lower their hands. Okay. I think someone else lower their hands. Cool. I was thinking maybe the teacher. There was one person who said they became an ECE teacher. Maybe they also responded with teacher before. I was hoping that was the case. So as you can see, I just did a little mini experiment here. You know that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Even as an adult, it's very difficult to answer. So asking a child who doesn't know anything, you know, that's you're just going to get unrealistic answers and responses. So anyway, let me go back to this. So let's move on from Menti. Hopefully everyone had a little bit of interaction fun. And let's move on to a little history lesson about me so that, you know, you kind of get to know a little bit about me. And yeah, so I'm going to start off with taking everyone back in time so there's a childhood version of me. So I am a first generation immigrant to New Zealand. My family and we moved to New Zealand in the early 2000s. We didn't speak a word of English at that time. I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. and we moved around quite a bit, mainly around the North Island. And then we decided to settle into this town called Hawke's Bay on the east coast of New Zealand. And my one claim to fame during that time, so I went to primary school there, is that I actually made it into the local newspaper. And of course, it was in the cultural section for the cultural day that we had. And so the school I went to, I think we participated in some sort of cultural day. And being one of the only Asians in that school, they volunteered me to hold the Chinese flag for their cultural day. And I think I just happened to be at the front, maybe for my height, I'm not sure. And the photographer took a snap of that, and it went into the papers. And I think my mother actually, took a clipping out of it and saved it all these years, because she brought it back to me when I asked her for some of my old school reports if she kept a copy of. So shout out to my mother, who actually did keep a copy of my records so that I can showcase and prove that I was not an A+ student. I was never the kid at the top of the class, or even second, or even third. I was maybe above average in some cases, but that was kind of me. I wasn't anything special. And you can see, and this is one of my very early school reports. So I was age 8, year 4. I think, I just moved to New Zealand not that long. And in my school report, if you can, read the comments there, my reading age was below my physical age, which, kind of makes sense. I had just moved to New Zealand, didn't really know English, and so I didn't really know how to read or write or speak any of it. Then the next year, I actually got placed into a lower class. So I was, in a class with kids younger than me, so that I could play a little catch up, which is pretty embarrassing, being the older kid in the classroom. And luckily, the school I went to, even though it was a public school and it was, quite a low decile school, they could afford what's known as a teacher aide. I still remember her name. Her name was Mrs. B, and she would take me out of class every now and then she would make me, cut out shapes or pictures out of a magazine, put them into an exercise book, and then she would make me write a sentence or write a story, using the words that I had learnt, and that, really helped improve my English. And you can see in the report here, it says, Michelle is a keen reader and regularly chooses library books. So at that point, age 9, I started going to the library pretty regularly, borrowing books so that I could improve my reading skills. And I think I did that because, I really wanted to kind of catch up to the other kids. And so I started doing that. And then in my final year of primary school, I actually graduated primary school with a higher reading age than my physical age, which, is pretty normal for primary school kids. But if you think about the fact that I had started, halfway through primary and I had to catch up to everyone else within the space of about 3 to 4 years, that's, well, I applaud myself for doing that, even though at the time it wasn't that big of a deal. And so when I think about, some of the successes I've had, my career so far, it didn't start with landing my dream job or, the first day of my job or anything like that. It really started a lot earlier, back in my childhood years, where I made little incremental steps and progressed towards where I am now. So that's sort of the point that I wanted to get at. Now, I threw in this not to trying to take you through my high school history, but this is an official certificate that I got awarded. And can you spot the mistake in this certificate? So I'll give everyone a second. Let me know in the Teams comment section if you can spot the mistake. Okay, so just developers mostly making map-centric web apps. George said Z. Yes, my last name, your surname. Yep. So one of the issues I had growing up as a child of immigrants wasn't the fact that I wasn't the top of the class, or the second place in the class, it was, I had bigger issues like getting my name misspelt in an official certificate that I received. But more often than getting my name misspelt, it was really commonly mispronounced. A lot of teachers and students didn't know how to pronounce it. Some would try and get it wrong, and I kind of just left them because at least they tried, right? So yeah, I threw in that for a little bit of fun. Okay, so moving past that, the curiosity equation that I briefly mentioned earlier. So even though I didn't really inherit the Asian genes for being good at maths, I came up with this really simple curiosity equation to kind of reflect how I sort of live my life. So curiosity equals learning plus discovery. And let me explain that a little bit. So when I first joined Microsoft, they kept preaching, and they still do, this concept of growth mindset to me. And if you haven't heard of growth mindset before, I'm not going to go into too much details about it because there's an actual book written about growth mindset that you can read about. I think it's written by Carol something. You can look it up. But essentially, growth mindset is sort of associated with this mindset where you don't believe you know everything. So, kind of in other words, you always think about the fact that there is the opportunity to learn and discover more. And so it kind of encourages you to be more curious. It encourages that you to, make mistakes and learn from your failures. Now, growth mindset is generally compared to, and you'll if you read the book, you'll find it there as well. It's generally compared to this other mindset called the fixed mindset. So fixed mindset is, and you might have met some of these people in your life, where a person is generally sort of fixated on the fact that they've reached the top. They know everything that they need to know. They're generally the people that assume they're the smartest person in the room. And so when you're dealing with people with a fixed mindset who think about the intelligence as sort of a fixed thing, it can kind of get a bit difficult, especially when you're trying to introduce, new concepts or new ways of something to them, because their mindset is so fixed. And so, someone with a fixed mindset are generally not really open to anything that can be challenging, that can, be conflicting or confrontational, or even, really lead to new ideas. They're not very, in other words, open-minded. And so that kind of brings me back to this curiosity equation that I've put together. Now, if you were a true mathematician, you'll probably challenge me and say, well, if this is really an equation, can we rearrange the equation and see if the value still holds true? So I've done the rearranging for you. Curiosity plus learning equals discovery. And I want to tell you a little story about how I think this equation still holds true. So the story is about how I really got into blogging. I started blogging almost a year into my first job at Microsoft, my first tech job. And within that 1 year, I sort of had done a lot of learning by that point. I learned a lot of stuff about cloud that year, but most of that learning was very passive. So I was absorbing knowledge, left, right, center from a lot of really intelligent and great technical minds and people and resources around me, but I hadn't really contributed to anyone's learning at that stage. And back then, I was sort of given this opportunity because of the role I was in. I was dealing with a lot of customers. I was given this opportunity to deliver a customer presentation on integration. And as part of, I guess, my learning journey to learn more about the stuff that I had to present, because I had to be the expert in the room, I drew this diagram here. you can see that it looks like a child's mess. So I drew this diagram here to help me, understand the technology that I had to present on. And then I remember putting this diagram in the appendix of the presentation, and I never showcased it. But this diagram here really helped me understand the technology, the thing that I had to present on. So I felt like it was sort of a shame that that I didn't really share it out. And so I was a bit curious at that point. I thought, maybe if I could present on this topic, maybe I could share this out through a different medium. And so I actually wrote a LinkedIn article on that very topic. And I called that LinkedIn article Explain by Example, and I turned it into a series. So it's all made up. And I said the first topic in this Explain by Example series is event grid, which was that diagram I just showed you. And that was the only diagram I had used in that article. And everything else I sort of wrote to explain essentially that diagram. And then I shared it out on LinkedIn. I didn't have that many followers back then. And I had a few colleagues, give me feedback and leave comments or come around physically in the office to me and tell me that they love the article, and congratulated me and all that kind of stuff. And that was when I discovered that I actually have a hidden talent that I didn't realize. And that talent is that I'm able to most of the time take complex tech topics, break it down into really simple analogies so that anyone can understand it. And the medium that I chose to do that was through writing, which is something that I have a passion for. So through that kind of learning and curiosity journey, I discovered something new of mine, and I also learned something. So if I rearrange that equation again, I also learned, through that blogging can take me, places. It actually landed my second job in Microsoft, but it also helped me, get a wider, I suppose, acknowledgement or presence from my network. So people started becoming more aware of my name and know who I am and what I do, which was something that I had kind of struggled with in my first year, because people didn't really know who I was or what I did or what I knew or what I could do. And so something as simple as blogging helped open so many doors for me, and so that was something that I had discovered and learned through my curiosity to try and see if I can do this thing that I have never done before. So just rearranging that curiosity equation back, I've always been a very curious kid. Growing up, I always wanted to know and understand how things worked and why certain things are the way they are. And I think I've sort of maintained this curiosity even as I grew up into my adulthood. And over the years, because I've stayed curious, I've been able to learn. I've been able to discover a lot, and I'm still learning and discovering every day. And I hope I'll stay curious, in the future as well. So I just want to encourage everyone that staying curious isn't something that we do as a kid. We tend to think that learning and discovering new things and being curious is usually reserved for kids because they have all the time in the world to do that. But we can also do that as adults, and you'll find that you're able to actually learn and discover and grow a lot simply by staying curious. Okay, so let's jump into a topic where I assume everyone's here to know about, which is, what's a perk of working at Microsoft. All these photos are actually taken by me or someone that I know, so that I own all these photographs that I'm going to show. The first bullet point I've got there is Vegas parties. That's true. There are Vegas parties, although I don't know if they're still a thing after the pandemic. So with the big tech companies, they generally like to hold large conferences where they invite customers and partners and employees in, and throw huge conferences and huge parties for all that kind of stuff. So I was lucky enough in my first year to be invited to one of those. So they flew me out to Las Vegas. We were basically just put into hotel rooms and conference rooms that were very heavily air conditioned for a couple of days because the outside temperature was like 40 degrees at minimum. So it's way too hot to be outside for more than a few minutes without being dehydrated. Another perk, endless supply of free t-shirts, you might think. That is also true. My tip is if you want endless supply of free t-shirts or free merchandise, which we call swag, buddy up with the marketing people. They always seem to have those swag to spare, so you can pick up a few leftover pieces that no one wanted from a conference or event or anything that they hosted. And for me, I was able to buddy up with the marketing people pretty easily because I started off in the sales role at Microsoft, and sales and marketing, they tend to talk to one another. So I picked up a lot of swag in my first year. Another benefit, rental car discounts. Now, I kind of knew about this when I first started, but I didn't really care because I'm one of those late bloomers who only got her full driver's license last year. And so I didn't really care about this until I actually could drive a car. So yes, that's also another perk or benefit. And central office locations, that's mostly true. So I've worked in the Melbourne office. That's where I started my whole sort of career in Microsoft. And then I moved to Wellington. So based on those two, I can tell you that they were very central in the city. But I've also been to the London office, the Sydney office, the Auckland office, and they were all very central areas. I would say this photo is actually from the London office. I think I was in the building and I just took a photo of it. And I think one of the perks of a central office location is they generally come with free car parking as well. And so you can park your car in the city for free, which I think is a benefit. Now, if you didn't realize, I was kind of joking about all of those perks. While they're all true, they're not really the perks of why I chose to work and stay at Microsoft. The real perks are the fact that I've had ample opportunity to learn, develop, and grow my career in a very short amount of time at Microsoft. So I've only been at Microsoft for over 3 years, probably coming up to my 3.5 years. And in that space of time, I've had 3 different roles. I've been able to go into different domains and learn a lot of different things and acquire a lot of different types of skills. Culture of diversity and inclusion. So we're very big on diversity and inclusion, D&I. So there's a lot of groups internally. So for example, women at Microsoft or Asians at Microsoft or Blacks at Microsoft or the Pride at Microsoft group. So there's a lot of groups to support sort of minorities and helping, bring and make minorities more inclusive in the company, but also because it's such a big company, you generally just get exposed to a very diverse range of colleagues and people who work with you. So I've worked with and know people, in America, in the UK, in Europe, and Asia, like all over the world. And I can call, my colleagues or some of them even friends as well. So it's pretty cool. Support for well-being, both physical and mental. So we have like really good programs for supporting our physical well-being and our mental well-being as well. So in terms of physical, we get things like gym allowances and fitness stuff, fitness equipment, like reimbursements and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. But the other thing that I really like that we try to push is we'll partner up with what we call the GIFT program, which is sort of like this program we came up with to help encourage people to give back to community and donate to charities and all that kind of stuff. So they'll partner up with different programs and try and come up with, physical challenges to encourage people to both donate and also physically challenge themselves every year. So I've seen things like the push-up challenge, the step challenge, all of that kind of stuff every year, which is pretty cool because it encourages people to maintain their physical health and also give back to their communities. And then in terms of mental well-being, we have a bunch of programs as well. I know that we can get free counseling sessions if we need it to. The company also gave us things like well-being days, which is like mental health days that you can just take off, no questions asked. If you're not feeling mentally well enough to work. So yeah, that's pretty cool in my opinion. The next bullet point there is care for humanity and the environment. So they like to do a few philanthropy stuff. We've got a thing called AI for Good, which essentially leverages some of the AI that we've built to tackle issues regarding environment, health, all of that kind of stuff. So global issues around the world. One of my favorite things is a couple of years ago, we announced our sustainability goals. And so one of the goals in terms of sustainability at Microsoft is to be completely carbon negative, not just carbon zero, by 2030. And they're making progress towards that, as far as I can tell, I think. So that's pretty cool as well. Global network. So that first photo that you see there, that's actually, you might be able to find me in there somewhere. That was actually taken in my first year as well. So I was part of the Aspire program back then. So the Aspire program is this program designed to essentially hire people straight out of college, straight out of school, and support them through this early in career channel, if you will. And so I was part of the Aspire program because I was sort of hired straight out of school. And what they did was they actually brought everyone together. So we all flew to England, and we all met, people all around the world who was in the same cohort. So that was pretty cool. But aside from that, just because it's such a big and global company, we get to meet and work with colleagues all around the world. Like my team, for example, right now is in the US. I also work with people in India, for example. So it's pretty cool to have that kind of global network, just because you work for a company. So yeah, that's definitely something that I thoroughly enjoy. Flexible workspace, so that's kind of dependent on teams and managers, I guess, but I've been pretty lucky in the teams and managers that I've had. So I'm currently a fully remote worker, so that means I can work from home, I can work in the office, I can kind of decide where I want my workstation to be. And so that's worked out pretty well for me, because I quite like that flexibility. And I know some people also quite enjoy that flexibility if you're a parent, for example, and you need to pick up your kid from school at 3 p.m. I know some people in my team do that. So it's pretty cool that they have that flexibility. Or if you need to go to doctors or dentists during the day, you can do that and then just come back and do work later on or something like that. And then finally, the last one, I think this is pretty well known. Big tech companies usually pay pretty well. So the compensation package is generally pretty good. It's at least above market rate in most countries. So you also, financially well looked after as well. Okay, so the thing that I keep sort of putting on hold is really my career journey so far. Like I said, it didn't really start with, my very first day on my very first job, which was a technology solutions professional. So I started Microsoft in 2019, and like I mentioned, sort of straight out of school, straight out of college, I was hired into this role called the technology solutions professional role, which is basically just jargon, means nothing to people who are external. But basically, it was a role where I was a pre-sales technical specialist. So you can think of it kind of like, the people who help you decide what you want to purchase. Now, the difference here is my role, and even though I was sort of a salesperson, wasn't quite like the people in the retail store who just stand there and come up to you and ask you what you need a hand with. Because I was focused on the cloud, so Microsoft Azure, the Microsoft Cloud, my job was really to go to customers and help them understand what the cloud is, help them sort of figure out what sort of workloads they can move to the cloud, and understand what kind of offerings we've got, and how it all works. So that's kind of what I did. And even through that job, I didn't necessarily love it because it was sales. I got to learn a lot of things. So, interacting with customers, communicating with, stakeholders and customers, and, other teams, being able to present in front of, a large audience, all that kind of skills, those soft skills I got from this job. And I also got the opportunity to build up my technical side. So as part of the role, I had to build out demos to sort of prove that the technology works. And so I had to learn, a lot of, a lot of new technologies very, very fast, and be able to make things work very quickly as well. And so even though I didn't love the job, I felt like I got a lot of opportunities to learn and then grow from that role. And that kind of led me into my next role at Microsoft, which was an Azure technical trainer. And so I moved into that role because I didn't really like the first one. But I was able to transfer some of those skills, even though it was a sales role, into this new role, which is more of a training role. So as an Azure technical trainer, my job is really to help teach and train mostly our customers to understand Microsoft Cloud services. And so I was able to leverage some of those skill sets I got from my first one, transfer it, and also build on top of that in my second role as an Azure technical trainer. So I think some of the main skills I got out of a technical trainer role is I was able to learn how to become a better teacher in essence, because you figure out that people have different learning methods or ways of learning, and so sometimes you have to accommodate to that. I would get people who ask me something that I've just explained, and it took a while for me to realize maybe the way that I'm describing or teaching or saying it isn't really being helpful because it's not the way that they would understand it. And so I learned a lot from my technical trainer role as well. Now, if you've been in any form of, sort of a teaching type of role, you know that there's pros and cons to it. So the pros obviously are, you're helping people learn, you see your students make progress, and that's really a result of your teaching. And so those are, all the pros to me. But the downsides is really, it was very repetitive. Even though I was teaching a lot of people, it was mostly the same content I had to deliver. So it wasn't very enjoyable, and I felt my learning and my growth really slowed down in that role because most of the time I was the expert in the room, so I wasn't really learning anything new on top of that. And so I grew out of that role after a while, mainly out of boredom. And so that landed me into my third role, which is the one I'm currently in at Microsoft, which is a software engineer. So I decided, why not do engineering? I feel like this is a perfect role to really learn and develop a new type of skills, and also grow from there. Okay, so I put in this slide as an opportunity to kind of share some of my learnings from my experiences, as well as give you an opportunity to also ask, questions around this as well. So I think you've heard this already. My main advice is really to stay curious. And one of my favorite quotes is to have courage and be kind. And you'll probably laugh at me when I tell you where I got this quote from. So it's actually from Cinderella, which I think most people might know, comes from Disney. So, have courage and be kind, or stay kind. It's all about being brave and being courageous, and having passion for what you do, whatever that may be, and doing it with kindness. So I'll tell you a story to kind of solidify this a little bit. So one of the things that I went through during my time at Microsoft, and well, I'm still at Microsoft, is that I had to go through promotions, which I think everyone probably is familiar with. Now, the thing about promotions is no one told me that you have to advocate for yourself, that you have to almost, in a sense, fight for it. I didn't realize that, and I wish someone had told me earlier, because, in the corporate world, the best advocate for you is really yourself. Now, there's a couple of ways to advocate for things. You can do it in a way that can come across very arrogant or aggressive or rude, or you can do it in a way which kind of showcases your dedication, your passion, and your reasoning for it. And even though at the time I didn't really feel like going down the second path, I felt more like the first one, because I was very upset, I was very frustrated, I didn't understand the process really, because I thought it was something that just got granted if you did the work. I had mentors from the other side of the world really, who helped coach me, that maybe there's a better strategy around it. And so through their mentorship, through their coaching, they kind of pivoted me towards the second route, which is really to do it in a way that's kind. And so I did, and I actually ended up getting that promotion earlier than I had expected. But not only that, that kind of kindness, and I haven't really described what the kindness I'm talking about is. So at the time when I was sort of fighting or advocating for my promotion, I was getting turned down a lot. And, I didn't really feel like doing the extra stuff that I was doing, that I felt like I should be promoted for. But even though I felt that way, I still continued to do it. And I think what ended up happening was, that really showcased. I got the promotion, and then about a year later, that actually, the work that I continued to do paid off as well, or it multiplied. And I just want to sort of talk about a book that I have been reading recently, called Give and Take by Adam Grant. And in that book, he talks about basically three types of people. So he says in the workplace, you can have someone who's a giver, a taker, or a matcher. Now, a giver is someone who just loves helping someone out, who gives their time, their resources, their attention, whatever it is they need to do to help someone. A taker is, well, essentially the opposite. So they like to take from people to help, succeed, to help fuel their own success, whatever it is. So they're usually takers. And the third person, or third type of people, is the matchers. So they like to match their give and taking. And I consider myself a matcher. So, a matcher would be someone like, if you do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I wasn't actually in the role of a matcher. So even though I wasn't receiving that promotion that I felt like I deserved, I was still giving. I was still doing the extra work that I had been doing. And in the book, he describes that, if you're a giver, you might not see that reciprocity, that favor back immediately. And that's because with givers, they tend to have that reciprocity and that favor multiply and then they see that reward a lot later down the road. And that reward that I got was about a year later, when I was transitioning from my my technical trainer role, because I kind of grew out of it into a different role. My manager, who helped me with my promotions and stuff, he went and advocated for me without me even asking him to. And I didn't realize why he would do that, because in a matcher's mindset, I hadn't done anything for you to reciprocate that kind of kindness. And now that I reflect back on it, it was because, I had done, if you think of, these favors, a long time ago, and now they've been multiplied, and now I'm reaping those rewards a lot later down the road. So I think my second piece of advice to everyone is, think about how you can give more. Think about how you can help someone else more, in the workplace, or your friends, or your family, around the household, because even though you might not see the rewards or the effects of whatever it is that you do immediately, that might actually get multiplied, and you might see that that reward a lot later down the road. So that's pretty much it from me. Sorry for the long spiel. I've got some of my contact details if you want to keep in touch. I've got my LinkedIn there, also my Medium blog and YouTube that I've mentioned. I've got links to those if you want to follow them. I'm also on Twitter. I'd say if you really want to get in touch with me, try Twitter before LinkedIn. I have a lot of people trying to contact me on LinkedIn, so I don't tend to be too responsive on LinkedIn. So yeah, try and reach out to me on Twitter first. All right, so I think that's it. Do we have time for Q&A, chit chat?
Yeah, sure. I really sorry, please enable the speaker. I really appreciate Michelle for the talk. That's equal.
Sorry, who's speaking? Was that Kevin? No, that's your hand up.
Okay.
Oh, Shelly, sorry.
Yeah. So I just turn on my. Really appreciate for your talk. I'm inspired by your career journey, especially how you write blogs, and how you learn, and how you transition between these different roles. I also have some questions. So I also write blogs on Medium, but I found that it takes lots of time to write articles. So I wonder how you find the balance between these activities beside your work.
Yeah, I've been struggling recently because I've started this new role, and I had to do onboarding and all of that for a couple of months. So it's my level of activity to do other things has gone down. I would just say that if you really want to get started, make the time for it. Book in an hour on the weekend if you, if you need to. What I do is, I sometimes will commit like half a day of my weekend. I'll go to a cafe, and then I'll just, write. Or yeah, you just need to find time out of your day. I mean, you're only really employed to work 8 hours a day, so you've got so many other so much other time that you can use to do that kind of stuff. Now, I know other people will use it to go to sports or do other things, so it's really just about how you prioritize it. Yeah, I think that's my best advice.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. I think Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Michelle, for sharing her story to us. And my question is, what is the biggest challenge during you changing your role and positions? Because I saw you change your role 3 times and finally became a software engineer. So actually, I think it's very inspiring to us. But I also want to know that how do you make yourself prepare for this role change?
So my one was actually quite quite a different journey. I think most people, so I did study computer science at school, so most people either go into the software engineering or that kind of role straight away, and I didn't. I joined these other roles, so it was pretty difficult, I would have to say, to pivot. And one of the challenges I really encountered was that even though, like, when I did interviews and stuff, people could see that I had potential, but what really stopped me was always the experience. So I never, I couldn't showcase that I had experience in this particular job because I had none. And so I almost gave up at that point, and that's why I called out my manager advocating for me, because at one point I actually did give up, and I just thought, well, I'll have to go and find experience somewhere else or on my own somehow. And he really fought for that. So he and I worked together, and we came up with strategies to help me get that experience while I was still enrolled, still in the company. And so he created this opportunity for me to do so, and then with that opportunity, that leads to another opportunity, which is really landing that job. And so I guess, yeah, you just have to kind of, really advocate and fight for it, and make the most of every opportunity that you get, even if you don't think it's going to lead to anything. You never know. So, yeah, that's sort of what happened to me, and that's what I've sort of learned from it as well.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I totally agree with you because I find very hard to find my first position on software engineering, and I get into the same problem as you had, because most of the employer, they said, "Oh, you don't have any experience and all the backgrounds on the software engineering or as a developer," so they just refuse it. But I think we all get through it. Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
Okay, I'll stop recording so we can just have an open discussion.